All right, welcome to the Comic Book Shop of Doom. I'm your host here on awesomestreaming.com. This is a what if video. I was thinking today, there's a lot of rumors going around that Kevin Feige might become a scapegoat at Marvel Studios for this year. All of the movies have underperformed. Now, a lot of people are screaming Marvel fatigue. You still got the pandemic going on and all kinds of other goodies going on where, a lot of people are afraid to go out to the show. They figure I'll just wait for this to go on the Disney Plus app. And maybe that some of the characters just aren't to their tastes. And then there's the woke factor. And so I did this video because there's rumors that his bosses are not very happy. So what if Disney fires Kevin Feige from the Marvel Studios? Where does he go? What does he do? Does he retire? Does he throw in the towel? I'm sure he's got enough money right now where if he got fired, he would never have to worry another day in his life. But these guys, he's around my age. I'm 47, so I think he's like 47 or 48. So he's not done yet. So here's what I think he would do. Here's some possibilities. Now, this isn't in stone, so these are just possibilities that I've come up with. Maybe you got ideas of where he can go. He goes to run the DC Extended Universe over there at what's going to be Discovery Warner, or Warner Discovery, or whatever it's going to be. It's no secret that DC Comics and the movies are a mess. Some movies are better than others. There's no rhythm to this stuff. They tried to rush and copy Marvel's formula. Would Kevin Feige copy Marvel's formula? Marvel already has 80 years of history. It goes back to 1939, and then the actual Marvel universe starts in 1961, but they draw back from stuff from 1939. So what would happen? Would he go to DC, take over Superman and Batman and all that? If he wants a guaranteed paycheck and they probably give him whatever he wanted, that's a good possibility. So he could revive their universe, save it, whatever. Okay, number 2. He raises money from investors and creates his own cinematic universe. Now, raising the money probably wouldn't be hard because they would get some venture capital guys. That's what they did with Marvel when they did Iron Man. They went out and they got a $500 million loan off of Merrill Lynch, and the collateral was the characters. Now, what's the collateral here? Nothing. It's just Kevin Feige's reputation. So that may be hard to raise the money, but people would have, if you give him like a 10% stake in it for not doing anything, people will be willing to throw him money. But here's the bad thing. He creates his own cinematic universe. He's got to come up with all the characters or assign guys, writers, and all that. That's going to take time, and that's going to be hard to do. And there's no backstory for these guys. It'd all be new. So that would take a lot of time and possibly a lot of money. So who knows? Number 3, here's one. He buys Atlas Comics. Now, what's Atlas Comics? It was what was his name? The guy that created Marvel before. His son Chip and Martin Goodman. Martin Goodman, when he sold Marvel to Perfect Film and Chemical, he stayed on for a little bit as a consultant, and then when he left, they were supposed to give Chip, his son, the job, and instead they went with Stan Lee. So he got mad and he formed Atlas Comics. Now they only were in business for a year, and what ended up happening out of Atlas was they were paying high page rates to the artists, and they couldn't get really good distribution, so it folded after a year. But it was revived. Probably about 8-9 years ago with some comics. And what they did was they're a couple years ago, like maybe before the pandemic, maybe like a year before, they cut a deal with Paramount to do a cinematic universe. They had like 24 issues, 24 different comic titles. The Brute, the Scorpion. A lot of the stuff was kind of rip-offs of Marvel books or DC books. So, I mean, right now they're not doing nothing. So, I mean, if he buys it, he's already got a deal with Paramount, and he could tell them, hey, and he dealt with them before because they put out the first couple Marvel movies. So he could say, hey, I could do this again, and I'm sure they'd love him because Paramount doesn't have any kind of universe going on. He could buy Valiant, #4. Here's the problem, though. It's screwed up. The Chinese own it now, so they might not be willing to sell, and then the rights are split between Paramount and Columbia for the properties. So they already have pre-existing deals there, so he'd have to go between those two studios to do something. Would he buy it? I doubt it. But you never know. Weirder stuff has happened. #5, he buys Dark Horse Comics. But here's the problem with that. They just got an injection of Chinese money. And I think Mike Richardson, who owns Dark Horse, I don't think he's ever going to sell that completely. He's going to keep it till he's dead. They got a small universe of properties he could exploit that they did in the 90s when they had the big comic book boom. But I don't think that would take either. I think that Mike Richardson wouldn't sell it. And I don't think they got the money to do much. The last couple years, they've put out some real, like, low-budget stuff. Like, almost direct-to-video stuff, even with the Chinese money. And then the other thing was, would Kevin Feige want to continue publishing comics? Or would his stuff just go to, he'd just make movies? You know, he would do like maybe one comic could be like the storyboard. And then he'd say, okay, we're going to do a movie off of this, and this is what's going to happen. The 6th idea, okay, he cuts a deal with Comcast Universal now through the DreamWorks Classics. They own the rights to the Gold Key, the Defiant, and the Broadway comics characters. There's a lot of stuff there. A lot of Jim Shooter material. The pre-Valiant comics, Gold Key, you know, like Solar, Man of the Atom. You got Dagar. You got Mighty Samson. You would have Turok. Stuff like that you could do, you could do a universe on, but, that, I would believe he would do that before he would go to Dark Horse. So, I mean, he sets up a studio at Comcast Universal and says, hey, you want a universe? I'll give you one. So who knows? And they got other properties there that they own. He could incorporate them into that universe. DreamWorks Classics was Classic Media and Boomerang, and they ended up buying all these characters. Like, they own the Lone Ranger, so you could incorporate him into that universe and stuff like that. So who knows? Then we got, what if he just goes to Netflix? They got the Mark Millar universe, whatever, the Millar world. They got some superhero properties over there they're starting to do. He could just tell them, hey, I could make movies out of this stuff, TV shows and all that, so he could become a highly paid executive over there. They'd welcome him with open arms. Or the competition. He goes to Amazon and does the same thing. Goes from scratch. Says, hey, I could create all these movies and TV shows and animated series. What do you think? I think they'd take them. So, I mean, these are just what I've come up with. What do you guys think? Where would he go? Like Amazon is buying MGM, so that's not going to be a factor there unless MGM cuts him a deal. The rest of the studios, maybe Sony Pictures gets them to do some stuff. Like they get them to plot the Spider-Man movies. They have the rights to Spider-Man until they are sold. In order for Marvel to get the rights back to Spider-Man, they have to, Sony would have to sell Columbia Pictures and all that, and then the rights automatically revert back. Well, if they have a hard time putting out movies that work, they could get him to say, hey, you're going to be the new grandfather of the Spider-Man universe. And they got all those characters they could use. So he would basically be working against Marvel. He probably, maybe they'd cut a deal and he would be like the liaison between Marvel. Who knows? But these are just some what-if scenarios I came up with if Kevin Feige ever gets blamed for the bad box office, the wokeness at Marvel and Disney decides to fire him or release him from his contract or whatever. He'd probably get a payoff, so he gets that golden parachute from Hollywood, so he wouldn't be needing any money. So who knows what happens? We'll see. Everybody have a good day.